Okay, because of a computer glitch, I've had to go to a second video. So welcome back. Um, the first question we were asking is if a randomly letter is selected from a English text, um, what is the probability for selecting a C? If I look from the distribution, I can quickly see that it's 0.03. I can read that directly off the graph. So the second question we're looking at slightly different, that we're looking at all the vowels. So that is A, E, I, O, and U. So if we quickly look at their probabilities and then look to add those together, which is equal to the probability of 0.39. The last question is looking at the distribution, where we are only interested in probability of getting a letter between A and W. Now what we could do is we could take all the probabilities all the way through there and add them together, but what is much more easy to do is look at the probabilities of these ones that aren't included, because if we go 1, take away the probability of getting an X, a Y, or a Z, then we would have the same probability as A through to W. So if we just have a look at those probabilities and then add those together, which if you add those together, you end up with 1 take away 0.004, which is 0.96. So the probability of getting a letter between A to W is 0.96 or 96%. Here's another example of a distribution, but this time rather than using probability, we're using frequency. This is the frequency of transport type for 100 students, so we know the total. So we could convert these probabilities and these frequencies into probabilities by just dividing by 100. This could be done at the start or at the end with the end calculation. So I'll show you from the start. So now the distribution's been changed into a probability distribution simply by taking the x-axis and dividing them by 100. So 40 divided by 100 is 0.4, 30 divided by 100 is 0.3, and so on. And then we have their individual probabilities. But this can also be done in its original form with making sure that we divide our frequency in our calculation by 100. And I'll show you how to do that. So you can see now the distribution has been restored to frequency, and in green I've put the numbers for each of the transport types together. So the question we've got is the probability that if you randomly select a person, that they would go on bus to school. So if we take a look at our bus here, which is 18, what we have to remember is that out of 100, which is equal to 0.18. The second question we've got is if you randomly selected a student, what's the probability that they walk or cycle to school? So walk and cycling, so we would have to add those two values together. 29 plus 15 over 100, which is 44 over 100 if we make a decimal 4. So that's distributions. They are very useful in being able to work out calculations as we have all the outcomes available. The other thing that's important with distributions is we have to describe their size and shape and different values about them. So this little checklist here, we can talk about the range, the modes, and then their shapes. And all of those things should be familiar to you. Now, if any of the information in the last two videos didn't make sense, or you feel like you need more practice of, it's a really good idea to have a go at the following Khan Academy lesson. I've put a link here which you can have a look at. If you click that link, it takes you straight through to the page where it's got a series of lessons which you could complete by watching videos, answering questions, and all those sorts of things. It's really important that your understanding of probability is solid going forward, and then it would be a good idea to do that if you're having any problems, or even if you attempt the workbook questions in this lesson and they're still not making a lot of sense, I would recommend that you go back and have a look at those lessons there. It may take you a bit of time. There's no hurry to complete. It's much more important to get your understanding up to speed rather than worrying about not getting enough of the other content done. And that's it. So what you need to do now is close this down, go back to your OneNote. There will be instructions to complete a task in your workbook or using the PDF. Again, if you have any problems, go back to that Khan Academy lesson.